Tracking. Tracking. Tracked. Alert. Alert. Subject obtained. Signal lost.
Welcome to MxdOut PCTV. Today I'm at Axis Communications Centre and I'm here with
Atul Rajput, Regional Director for Axis Communications.
and he's going to be explaining what they actually do here. So tell me about what you do here.
Axis Communications, we're the global market leader in network cameras. So our focus has been driving the convergence from analog to IP in terms of network video cameras. We have the broadest portfolio on the market today. Very much our focus has been on the enterprise and mid-market segment. But recently we've developed solutions specifically to tackle to surveillance needs for the small system segment.
Okay, right. So where would you like to see yourself with Axis Communications with the cameras? What's new at the moment for 2013? What I mean by that, what's your new lineup of cameras? Because when I went to Synology event, they had some selection of cameras that connect specifically to nav stations. So can you tell me a bit about that, please?
Sure. What we've seen is a trend where in the small system segment, which if you look at it from a global perspective, 50% of every CCTV camera sold is in what we call the small system segment, which is sub-16 camera installations. Now, historically that's been all analog, and our focus has been very much at the enterprise and mid segment. But what we're seeing is perhaps what I perceive as the biggest game changer in surveillance, where historically, if you look at cameras over the last 40 to 50 years, you've always had a camera which records to an endpoint, usually a black box DVR, or it used to be a VCR.
Yeah, I remember the video days.
And then when we move to IP, you're still transmitting cards where you hold the recordings in the camera. We're seeing a big trend with IP cameras offering that to make this installations more simple, remove the endpoint of having a legacy VCR or DVR, or even the need for a PC, and the camera itself becomes a recording device.
Is removing, well, obviously you can still have these cameras connected to a PC as well, so you haven't really totally got rid of the computers, but to make it more efficient you can do that. They can work on their own. Also, so what kind of cameras do you actually do? What cameras in, like, do you do your thermal cameras? What's other cameras? Cameras that shine in the dark? Them sort of cameras?
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned about low light, because Axis over the last few years, we spend about 15% of our revenue back in R&D, and a couple of years ago we launched that gives you stunning images at low light, but in colour. Now historically when you had low light cameras, it would switch to black and white, and that's really been some cutting edge innovation that we've introduced into our range, mainly for the enterprise and mid-market segment, for critical national infrastructure, for transportation, or for anyone that has buildings where you need to have surveillance at night.
Okay, so how big on scale of how many cameras do you actually develop? So how many cameras have you got from, obviously, for the entry level all the way up to the high level? How many cameras?
Well, we have the broadest portfolio on the market, so very much from the very entry level right up to the high-end thermal cameras, high-end PTZ cameras. So we have well over 100 products, so the broadest portfolio on the market today.
I heard that you make cameras for everyone, basically. It's like an app for that, like on an iPhone. You've got a camera for everybody and every country, basically.
We've tried to fill the gaps. I mean, one of the more recent examples was covert cameras, which is an application which has been used in surveillance for many years, but a lack of IP-based covert cameras. So we launched our P12 series to tackle those particular environments for covert surveillance or integration into things like ATMs. And we've slowly, over the last few years, filled those gaps in the portfolio, offering our solution partners, our integrators, and our end customers a complete end-to-end selection when they choose the surveillance cameras for their installation.
Okay, so what's going to be new for 2014 for the cameras? Like the cameras that I've already seen, what are you going to be doing now? Because I've been obviously speaking to the engineer of Axis, and there was basically what I was getting is it's mainly to do with storage. So much storage if there's not so much storage, it just becomes better because obviously the price comes down a bit, and also the frame rates, certain amount of frame rates that you need to obviously see the quality of the image or the video image. I noticed as well that your cameras can do so much stuff. It's ridiculous. Talk me through one of the cameras. I think it's one with the light. I can't remember what it's called now. The M series, I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the M series of cameras are a cost-effective, feature-rich range of cameras designed for small systems. So perhaps the one you were alluding to was the M1054, which
That's the one.
has an inbuilt white light, an inbuilt speaker as well. So what it lets you to do is put it in an environment, turn the lights off at night. If someone breaks in, a PIR in the camera detects activity, turns the white light on, which one gives you good images, but also it acts as a deterrent. Suddenly a light comes on, followed by an audio clip that you've uploaded to the camera to warn off that particular intruder. So it's actually devised to be a proactive surveillance tool.
Box is in the corner of the room on the screen, and it triggers off an alarm, and it all stores in data. And how much does it store up to data? So obviously you can use a NAS station, and some of them use SD cards.
Yes.
So what kind of, say I bought an SD card that was 16 gig, 32 gig or 64 gig SD card and put it into a camera that obviously has that option for SD card. How long would that record for, and does it record unnecessarily? Does it just carry on recording, or obviously you said something about triggering something off if there's a movement. Can you explain to me about that?
Sure, it's a good question because it's a commonly asked question, how much can you store on the SD card? So we now support, higher capacity SD cards, and over time that will increase, I'm sure, as the consumer market will probably go up to 1 terabyte SD cards. But the issue really is how much you can store on the SD cards is related to how you record the video. So for example, if you're recording at full HD at 25 frames per second, that will obviously eat up the consumption on the SD card much quicker than only recording on motion detection at a lower frame rate and perhaps SVGA resolution.
What's SVGA?
It's basically a resolution of 800 by 600, so it's just below the HD standard in terms of resolution. So for anyone interested in understanding really how much storage that they could expect to receive on an SD card based on how they want to record, our website has an excellent tool to calculate the storage, so that will tell you exactly how much storage you would expect to maintain on that SD card based on the specific parameters of your installation, frame rate, how many days you wish to record at, and the resolution you record at as well.
Right, so what is the standard resolution that we would expect from 1080p resolution? What kind of frame rates are we looking at?
I mean, you can do full frame rate at 1080p. I think the question more is, what does the application demand?
Yeah.
Do you need high resolution? That's fine, but do you really need 25 frames per second? You may not.
Right.
Everything is application dependent. I think the industry's always had a perception of full frame rate, 25 frames per second. But I think from reading an article some time ago that on average the security industry records at about 6 frames per second.
6 frames.
And that was pre-high definition. But because of the cost of storage has come down, the ability for networks to handle more bandwidth, and particularly a very efficient compression like H.264, which we use within our cameras, which mirrors what we use in the consumer video industry in terms of Blu-ray DVDs. If you download a clip from YouTube, it uses this form of compression. And I think this has allowed us to record at higher resolution, more frames per second. But I would say every application demands a different set of requirements for frames per second and resolution.
Right, you talk about bandwidth. What kind of bandwidth are we talking about? Because I did have a demo with having an iPhone 5, which is on your phone, and he also said you can do it on via tablet and probably anywhere else in the world, just by IP. Bandwidth. How much bandwidth do you actually need? I mean, internet speed. Would you need to obviously see a clear image like anywhere in the world or anywhere you are, I should say.
Again, similar to the question about storage, it applies to bandwidth as well. So this calculator we have on the website gives you both the bandwidth and storage required. Now, if it's just a still image once every few seconds, it uses very limited bandwidth. If you're putting high definition video at 25 frames per second, then of course the bandwidth required to see that live would be different.
Yes.
But what we've seen with the proliferation of broadband networks, and certainly with 4G coming out, the likelihood of being able to receive high quality video at frames per second, which are perhaps higher than we're used to historically, will change because the infrastructure around us is allowing us to receive better quality, faster video streams over things like smartphones, tablets, etc. on the move, whether it's 3G or whether it's 4G as we move to a 4G network.
But you can definitely run at the moment with 3G. What about anything underneath 3G? Can you still get a signal on the screen?
Yeah, it all comes down to the update of the images. You can get an image, you can have images as small as 10-15 kilobits if you just take a snapshot image from a camera. And the beauty of the cameras is you can configure profiles which have very limited resolution size, which limits the bit rate that you would need for that specific image. So if your bandwidth connection that you're viewing from is very small, you can set up profiles in the camera which mirror that. You ask to view that profile, and it basically compresses the image down to a size which will allow you to hopefully receive an image in based on your connection.
Right, so what software is out there for your products at the moment?
Access has always been committed to open standards, so we have actually over 1,000 different application partners. We have different video management software packages, analytics which you can put in the camera. So take the iPhone philosophy. I have an iPhone, I log on to the App Store, and I can choose a worldwide a selection of applications written by developers all over the world that I can download and put inside my iPhone. Same principle with the camera. Not to that degree, but there are applications like people counting or heat maps which are written by third-party developers which can actually download and plug them into the camera, turning that device from a surveillance camera into, for example, a people counting camera.
Excellent. With Synology, where are you with Synology, with your cameras and their NAS stations? So basically what I want to actually ask you is, from the bottom range, what are we looking at from Synology NAS stations with it's like your starting cameras, so someone to get started. Basically, if they wanted to monitor their house or monitor someone who's got Alzheimer's or something like that, something with sound, obviously from your camera, motion detection, and also a bit discreet, so not totally in their face. And obviously with Synology, their NAS station or another NAS station, where are you with that? Like the starting of NAS stations?
As I mentioned, we have a large number of technology and development partners, Synology being one of them. So certainly we're seeing a trend where there is more demand to move away from the DVR, PCR type scenario for smaller environments. So the Synology NAS would be a perfect complement to that kind of installation, where a very maintenance-free type of box which supports the Access cameras, and because we're based on open standards, they're able to keep up to date with our new range of cameras. And the Synology device will then be the repository for holding the recordings, and of course then you can access the Synology device. Means you don't have to have a PC and a monitor up and running to view the images. You could be anywhere in the world and your NAS device is holding the recordings.
Okay.
Certainly with the new wide angle range of cameras, what they allow you to do is put in a camera and perhaps cover with one camera what you used to do with two or three. So from a deployment perspective, from an aesthetics perspective, having one camera instead of a couple may suit a particular installation. And the ability to have one camera viewing, say, this entire room, it gives you the ability just to log on to one view and get a complete understanding of what's going on in that particular environment. Analytics that you can put in the camera, heat maps being a very good example. So companies like Cognomatics, for example, develop heat map algorithms which you can embed into the camera. And so, for example, in a retail store, you could work out over a period of a week or a month, etc., looking at which parts of the store the people standing the most, then they have a good understanding and where can they position their promotions. They want to position them where they see the most traffic within the store.
Yes.
So actually what happens is the camera becomes not just a surveillance tool.
Like, obviously having the internet and you want to create traffic to your web page, this is like the opposite. Well, not the opposite, it's kind of the same thing, but in reality. So you can have software and you can have the camera in the top in the building, and you can find out, say you've got a shop in a supermarket and you want to go and find, you've seen people go specifically to this position, and that's where you basically want to know what these people are looking at. This is what this camera and this software does. So thanks for watching MxdOut PCTV.